One day away, ladies and gentlemen. We are from Minnesota Vikings finalizing their 53-man roster. Who do you think should be on it? We're going to see some surprises. We already saw one last night. We're going to break it all down. We're going to look at who's already been cut, who I project to be cut, and my 53-man roster prediction that I released on Sunday afternoon, including a practice squad projection as well. Welcome to the Real Forno Show.
Locate file. I love this. Hold on. Stand by. We'll get there. We had this same problem yesterday, and do you think I was smart enough to look at today's? No.
Let the record show I didn't say that, Dave did.
Welcome to the Real Forno Show, hosted by Tyler Forness, the managing editor of USA Today's Vikings Wire, writer for the College Football Network, publisher of Substack Run In Shooter, host of The Good, The Bad, and The Hungry on the Voices of Wrestling Podcast Network, as well as a founding member of Vikings First and SKOL.
You are looking live. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to have some fun here tonight on the Real Forno Show. I am your host, Tyler Forness. With me, as always, top right corner. His name is producer Dave. Dave, what's in the glass?
Texas bourbon whiskey from Fire Oak Distilleries down in San Antonio. It's 47.5% alcohol, 95 proof. Pretty good.
That is pretty good. I am drinking water out of a Yeti.
It's been a rough day, I know, tracking all those players that got waived, cut, released, traded, whatever.
Mm-hmm. It's been a busy day, but a lot of it has to do with just preparing for tomorrow. And if you aren't sure who the Vikings have already moved on from, you can go to vikingswire.usatoday.com, where, as most of you already know, I am the managing editor.
No,
and we have a nice.
It's right there on the ticker.
We have a nice tracker on the site, or if you don't want something right in front of you, you can look at the tracker that Dave has below, which came from vikingswire.usatoday.com. So he is on top of everything, and we are trying something new here today. Odie and Eclair are downstairs. They got peanut butter lick mats, and if you've never seen a lick mat, it's one of those little, it's like a little square, and then it's got like all these ridges and stuff. It's like a sensory thing, and you pour like peanut butter or pumpkin on it, and then they lick it off, and it strengthens their mouth, their tongue, their jaw muscles, and it stimulates their brain. Well, they can also hear me because I put the show on the TV. So I think that's a nice little touch. So that we're going to have ourselves a little bit of a good time today. And let's briefly talk about the preseason game on Saturday. And the Minnesota Vikings lost their 10th straight preseason game, this one to the Arizona Cardinals by a score of 18-17. It was really a tale of two halves. The Vikings dominated in the first half, especially the first 7 minutes of the game in the first quarter, where they had 11 plays, 80 yards, and 2 touchdowns. And the only other 2 plays of the game were the Cardinals, and one of them was a strip sack by Jay Ward. So overall, I came away really impressed with a lot of things, and especially early on in the game, because that's when you saw the best players. And when I'm judging Jaren Hall, I'm trying to judge him based on context, which is why I haven't been nearly as down on him as other people, because you have to look at the scenario. You have to look at the circumstances. And that all matters when you're having these conversations. And it's something that not everybody wants to talk about. He was playing with a lot of third teamers. The offense has been very vanilla, no matter what point of the game he's playing in, because it's preseason. You're not game planning. You're running a basic offense. And because you're running a basic offense, you're not doing a whole lot. So based on base, you're not really, hey, I know that they like to run this formation, this blitz in this scenario. You're not doing that. You're trying to identify who wins mano a mano. And is like Vidarian Lowe, who just got traded to the New England Patriots, is he going to beat the edge rusher in front of him? Is Lucky Jackson going to beat the corner off of his release and get some separation? We want to see those things. And that is how we're going to make those decisions. I'm not going to scheme up stuff for you, but I want to see how you perform within the context of a basic structure. And then it'll make it easier for me to project. If I do this for you, how are you going to handle it? Are you going to be successful with it? And that's what the preseason is really all about. Jaren Hall had a little bit of an up and down game against Seattle, a much better performance against the Titans. And then he played the entire game on Saturday. And I will recommend you go to Luke Braun's Twitter at Luke Braun NFL. And he broke down the interception and explained why it wasn't Jaren Hall's fault. And it was exactly what I thought it was. So Ben Sims was running a stick route where you basically go up 5-6 yards and then you cut. And then you basically flatten it out and run an out route or an in route. I think sticks are actually always out routes. So he runs an out route, but he stops instead of continuing to go. And that is part of the reason why that interception was thrown. He's leading the receiver, which is incredibly normal. So I'm throwing to a spot that you're supposed to be at, and there are landmarks. So when you're a quarterback, if you're running a 15-yard dig route, so an in, you go up 15 yards, you hit your break, and then you cut straight and you run flat. You don't want to run crooked. You want to run flat. And because you run flat, I know that the ball needs to hit the hash mark right in that 15-yard mark, because I know that's where you're going to be. If you decide to stop or break off your route, it's called a timing pattern. So it's not going to work. That's why the interception ended up happening. So I thought Hall played pretty well. He showed a lot of growth. There's still things to work on. He's a 5th-round pick. But he showed enough, and especially growing from game to game to game, that there is still a chance that he could potentially be a starter down the line. I think you wanted to see if there was any potential of that at all based on how he handled the preseason, how he handled training camp. And I think the steady improvement gives you hope that it could happen. Will it? Who knows? But the answer is not no. And I think that's really important as far as wanting to invest the time in developing him. And I really appreciated that they gave him time and didn't pull him out after the first half because he didn't get as many reps as they wanted him to. I think all of those things factor in. And I was very impressed with Hall in his final preseason performance.
What did I call him yesterday?
I don't remember.
Good response. I said he's going to turn into a functional quarterback, unlike the unemployed Kellen Mond. I liked what I saw. I liked the zip. Darren had put out that, he tends to loft passes, and people call that touch, that he would like to see it lower trajectory and a little bit more zip on that almost no space to throw the ball catch. The pass he threw was just, and that's exactly what we want to see him be able to make that kind of throw. And he did. And I like that. Now, John talks about his scrambling ability. I like that too. I also like the play action pass rollout. He played that well. Mm-hmm. I thought he played extremely well in the preseason game as a whole. Now, there's a few mistakes, but as a whole, he played pretty well. And you saw as they started rotating people in, the play start to go down, right? Because you start with second string, and then you go third string, and then you go to the left behinds, fourth stringers, and it just deteriorated from there. But I was quite pleased with what I saw from Jaren Hall. Question is, will he make the final 53, or will they try to sneak him onto the practice squad?
I don't think you can sneak him onto the practice squad, Dave. I'm going to be blatantly honest with you, because this is now a 3-quarterback league. And why is it a 3-quarterback league? They changed the emergency quarterback rule where you can dress a third quarterback without having to give up one of those 46 game day roster spots. So you can dress 47 guys. And that quarterback basically only plays if quarterbacks 1 and 2 get injured, or it's an absolute blowout and you put in the third quarterback in the fourth quarter and give him some reps. So it's a bonus game day roster spot for you to have. You cannot elevate a guy from the practice squad to put in that spot. It has to be on the roster. And that matters too. He played well enough that I don't think you can realistically think you're going to sneak him onto the practice squad. I don't think so. And I've heard the arguments against it. Like, oh, you can sneak almost anyone onto the practice squad. Why? Only like 6-7 guys a year are claimed after cutdown day. Yeah, there aren't that many claimed. But do you want to risk a quarterback in today's day and age where quarterback is more important than ever, Dave?
Now, are you talking 6 or 7 claimed at cutdown day or throughout the season? Because I see people pick up
just cutdown day.
Okay, I see people pick up, snipe people off of other players' practice squads all season long.
Yeah, I'm only talking cutdown day. Remember, the Vikings hosted the Chiefs for joint practices in 2007, and they drafted Tyler Thigpen in the 7th round, and they thought, hey, we can develop this guy. We like this guy. Well, the Chiefs did too, and they claimed him off waivers when the Vikings tried to sneak him to the practice squad. So you have to be really careful. And there's genuine precedent to avoid that. Because of that third quarterback rule, I don't think the Vikings will try to play with fire. And it doesn't matter what your opinion on Hall is. If you think he's going to be the savior of this franchise, which is a joke I have in a Vikings Discord that I'm in, or if you think that he's just going to be a bad backup and he's just never going to be anything, or somewhere in between, the third quarterback rule makes him that much more valuable to the team. And that's something that we need to keep tabs on. Also, by the way, Dave, the banner, it looks like Tanner Vallejo was traded to the Patriots, not Badarian Lowe, just by the way it reads. Just a heads up.
Well, too bad. That's what I put. So I'm not changing it.
Fair enough.
You talked about how the Chiefs liked, what's his name?
Tyler Thigpen, and snagged him. Could the Vikings have seen, since they did the joint practices with the Titans and the Cardinals, seen players from either of those two teams that they might be targeting, or at least watching, keeping an eyeball on to see if they get cut? Oh, yeah. It absolutely. There are plenty of guys that I'm sure the Vikings are keeping tabs on. And I don't know who. I don't really have any guesses on that. I don't have contacts within the pro scouting staff. But I will say this. The Vikings will most certainly not have the same 53-man roster at 3 p.m. on Tuesday that they will have by 8 p.m. on Wednesday. There's going to be changes. And one of those changes is procedural. So take a look at some of the veterans on the roster. Jonathan Bullard, Johnny Munt, Brandon Powell. Let's say all 3 of those guys are guys that you are going to have on the roster. You can cut them and then just bring them back the next day, because one of the reasons why teams cut veterans and then just bring them right back is because they're not subject to waivers. If you have 4+ years vested in the National Football League, you are not subject to waivers after cutdown day. So, boom, you just end up going right to free agency. So you talk to them, and these guys are all on veteran minimum deals. You just say, hey, we're going to release you. We're going to re-sign you Wednesday afternoon once we put these guys on either injured reserve or the physically unable to perform list. Why is that important? If you put them on it now, they can't return. And because they can't return, that Like a guy like Kene Nwangwu, who's, let's say hypothetically he's out for like another 3 weeks. You put him on IR. He can come back week 5. Chris Reed's been on the NFI list. Well, what if he's ready to come back in week 7? Put him on the NFI list.
Speaking of which, what happened to him today?
We'll talk about that. But I want to get through this point. So you're going to see veterans get cut and brought right back because they're on vet minimum deals, and it doesn't matter. It won't affect the salary cap. It won't impact anything. And that is something that you're going to see. The Vikings acquired Jalen Reagor and Ross Blacklock after the initial cut down. That's probably going to happen again. The Vikings already traded one player. They traded Vidarian Lowe to the New England Patriots for a 6th-round pick. That 6th-round pick is owned by the Las Vegas Raiders, not owned by the New England Patriots. So something to keep in mind when we're talking about draft pick compensation come April. Mm-hmm. The Vikings also ended up trading a player last year. They traded Jesse Davis. They got a 7th-round pick from the Steelers for 2025. And they obviously got Jalen Reagor and Ross Blacklock last year. Don't be shocked if they try to do that again. Once, twice, or 3 times. And there's a non-zero chance the Vikings may make a trade. What happens if they like their edge depth and they decide to move on from DJ Wonnum and they get somebody to give them like a 4th or a 5th? It saves them some cap space, which they're going to need for these extensions. And the level of play is not really going to decrease from edge 4, which is Patrick Jones, and then edge 5, Luigi Villain, he's fine. So you look at all those aspects, the Vikings are going to have a much different roster on Tuesday afternoon than they do Wednesday night. So just be prepared for that. And don't panic with some of these veterans that get released. Now,
well, I wouldn't call it much different. I would call that there's a handful that's possibility of being different.
It could easily be upwards of 6 or 7 guys. It could be 2.
A handful.
But that's significant to me. Mm-hmm. If you change out 7 guys on a 53-man roster, you're talking about like 12%. That's a lot. That is a big portion of the roster that you're changing over from one day to the next. So I think that it's important to know that we have this and why it's happening. But you did mention Chris Reed earlier, and this I found very interesting. So I wanted to point
round bellies.
Chris Reed restructures contract for a 2nd time. Now let's go back to March. He had $2.4 million on his contract with some not likely to be earned incentives. But none of it was guaranteed. They could have just cut him for nothing. He chose, and the Vikings worked with him. They cut his overall salary by $1 million. They guaranteed him $600,000. So no matter what, he could have been cut. He'd still get $600,000 from the Minnesota Vikings. And he did that because he knew he was going to have to take a pay cut, but then he at least got something in return, and that's normal. Jordan Hicks did the same thing. $5 million to $3.5 million in salary, but instead of having nothing guaranteed, the Vikings guaranteed all $3.5 million. So that's one of the ways there's this give and take with these negotiations, because Jordan Hicks was in danger of being cut and getting nothing. Now he gets $3.5 million. That's a good chunk of change. So those things matter. And Tyler Ireland is in the chat asking if Jalen Reagor is considered a veteran the same way Powell or Bullard is. No, he's not, because he only has 3 vested seasons.
Mm-hmm. Takes 4.
Finished your 4th season in order to be considered a vested veteran. And that active roster seasons, I think you have to be on the active roster, not practice squad, for at least 8 games for it to be considered a vested season. I may be slightly off on that, but it's something along those lines. If you're on the practice squad, it's not a vested season. It just isn't. And if they were to waive Reagor, somebody could claim him, or somebody could trade for him. And I think that's one of the theories floating around right now is Reagor played so much in the preseason game as a showcase to continue to show how well he's been playing during camp and in the preseason, hoping that somebody will give up draft pick compensation for him. Vikings have a pretty deep receiver room. Jalen Naylor, Brandon Powell, Tristan Jackson, and they may be like, you know what? Maybe we can get something for Reagor because there's just not enough room for him to shine, and Maybe somebody will think the same way Kwesi did last year. And after he's performed this preseason, this is probably the best he's looked as an NFL player. That doesn't necessarily mean you'll get anything out of him, but it's something to be aware of and be cognizant of. So I'm really interested to see what happens with him. And I will keep tabs on that. But I do think the Vikings are going to make a couple of those Jalen Reagor, Ross Blacklock type trades. They have, so right now, their 4th and their 5th are tied up. They cannot be traded because they are compensation for the Jalen Reagor trade. It's conditional. He has to hit certain statistical plateaus. And if he hits those plateaus, then it goes up to a 4th. Otherwise, it stays a 5th. So both of them cannot be traded by the Vikings. But what they do have is they have the Lions 4th. They have 2 other 5th round picks. And they have 2 other 6th round picks this year that they can use as arsenal to be able to make some of those trades. I wouldn't be surprised if they make a few of them, because they're going to try and build this roster, and it could be a player for player swap. Maybe they trade DJ Wonnum because, there's a cornerback that could be our cornerback 3 that I can get for DJ Wonnum. Let's make that trade. So there's a lot of different avenues that the Vikings can go about this, and I'm very intrigued to see how Kwesi attacks it, because we saw how we did with his first cut down day. He's very aggressive. He wanted to bring in talent on this team, and it's the Moneyball approach. And you're going to miss. It's just a fact of life. You're going to miss, but you're taking calculated risks, low impact moves. Ross Blacklock, they got a 7th round pick back and they traded a 6th. You go back about, I don't know, what was it, like 40 spots to be able to get a player that was drafted in the 2nd round and has a lot of pass rush upside. It hasn't worked out. That's a very low risk move. Jalen Reagor, 7th round pick and likely a 5th round pick. That's pretty low risk too for a guy who was drafted one spot before Justin Jefferson. And we make fun of it, but he was a 1st round pick. That is something noteworthy. And it's worth taking a bet on that after 2 years of playing for an organization that it didn't seem like they were developing him much, and it felt like they were just ready to throw him away like garbage. The Vikings come in and they try to make something out of him. It hasn't worked yet.
But he's improved this preseason over what he did last year by far.
They also did the same thing with TJ Hawkinson. I'd say that's worked out. It was a $900,000 cap at year 1, $9.33 million this year. They basically gave up the equivalent of a 3rd round pick because they got 2 4ths back. They traded a 2nd and a 3rd. And when you look at the overall value, it ends up being a 3rd rounder. I'd say TJ is worth the 3rd round pick. And that's where the Moneyball approach can really work.
Now he's worth his extension.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see. Reports are that he wants to set the market. And that's
which would be 18 plus million a year.
At a certain point, you're not worth the extension if you're going that high above market. I still think Darren Waller's deal is above market because it's kind of a dummy deal. There's like no guarantees on it. 3 years, $51 million. And the the Giants can cut him for basically no penalty after this year. How much of that is that really a legit extension? Teams will be like, no, it's not. George Kittle's $575. Yeah. I think that's the baseline that a lot of people are going to be utilizing, Dave. I really do. And it's good. It's very interesting to see how everything's going to end up playing out.
Well, I'm curious how they play it out because he's under contract this year, so he's got to play. Next year, they could throw the tag at him, and he has no choice unless he wants to sit out and lose all that money, fines, and everything else. With the tag, you can sit out, and there's no repercussions other than you don't get paid. But it's going to be interesting to see how it goes. Do I think he's worth that highest 18 million plus average per year? Probably not. That's probably overpaying him. But Are the Vikings willing to make something close? Well, Kwesi has yet to do a long-term contract. And this is one of those sticking points where how will Kwesi do this that I find fascinating.
Yeah, it's going to be really fascinating. And Dave, you know what else is fascinating? There is a giveaway coming from Fans First Sports Network, our podcast partner, and it can send you to the week 1 game of your choice. How does that work, and how can our listeners and viewers of this show get involved?
It's real simple. It's as easy as going over to contest.fansfirstsports.com and filling out the appropriate information. And once you've done that, you're eligible to get 4 free tickets grouped together, valued up to $5,000. So 5,000 divided by 4 is $1,250. Those are nice tickets. I don't care what stadium you're in. But for Vikings fans, of course, that's U.S. Bank. And that's going to put you probably lower bowl 50-yard line. And all you've got to do is go over there, fill it out, do what's required, and there's not much, and you enter to win. The closeout date is September 4th. So you must do this before September 4th to get an opportunity to go to a week 1 game. Now, if you're not in the Minnesota area and can't make the game at U.S. Bank, but say you're on the coast, say you're like Luke Braun and live in L.A., right? You can get tickets for that game. Or you're in New York and you want to see Aaron Rodgers get beat up and sacked. You can go to that game if that game is there. I haven't looked, but that's an example. So if you want a chance to do it, it's in the comments. Just go to contest.fanfirstsports.com, fill it out, and you have a chance to win 4 primo seats for you and whoever you invite to go with you, your friends, your family, whomever, and you'll have a great time, and it'll all be on Fans First Sports Network. Gotta love it.
Absolutely. And I'll tell you, the dogs are doing good. Odie decided to go eat Eclair's Licky Mat, but she's happy, and I think she's just over peanut butter, so that's fine. Let's talk about my 53-man roster projections, Dave. And at the end, we're going to talk about my practice squad projections, which is only based on players from the roster that I think would make the practice squad. I left 4 spots open for outsiders because you usually have some outsiders on the practice squad too. Mm-hmm. So, but I want to preface this as well. There will be no Wednesday night show this week, but we are going to have a show tomorrow night, Tuesday, breaking down the initial 53-man roster. And that could come earlier, but I think we're still planning on doing it at 6 p.m. Central. And we are going to be talking all about what the Vikings did, what they didn't do, any surprises, and we're going to break it all down and take a look at some potential players that maybe the Vikings will have their eyes on. So Tuesday
we'll
show,
at those guys at the very bottom of that 53 that might be the ones that, whether it be Kene Nwangwu, right? And we know that he made the 53-man roster tomorrow, but on Wednesday he's going to the IR list. Stuff like that.
Yep. And we're going to talk all about every aspect of it tomorrow night, Tuesday, August 29th, 6 p.m. Central. And I will be at the State Fair Wednesday night. That's why we're moving it. But timely wise, it makes all the sense in the world. So be prepared. It will not come Wednesday. Now let's get to this 53-man roster projection. And if you're looking below, You've already seen everybody on the tracker, but I'm going to break down each position group. Quarterback, I am not going to talk about much. It's Kirk Cousins, Nick Mullins, Jaron Hall. We're keeping 3. We're going to keep all of them. And the only way I think we move on from one of these guys, I thought it would only be Trey Lance. Trey Lance was going to be ultimate wild card. And if we brought in Lance, I thought we were going to trade Nick Mullins, not Jaron Hall, because Nick Mullins is arguably a top 5 straight up backup quarterback. And we talked about this before. I consider a backup quarterback a guy that you don't want starting. You're not trying to develop into a starter. He is a backup, a straight up backup. And that's what you have with Nick Mullins, just a stalwart backup. And Jaron Hall's your developmental guy. Right now, let's go to running back. Running back is, I have them keeping 5. And here's why I have them keeping 5. I think Kene Nwangwu is not going to start the season on the active roster. Put him on the PUP list.
Sorry,
or
we just got our first thumbs down of this night.
Oh, that's a shame. That's a shame. If you don't like the show, I'm open to criticism. Fire away.
No, they may not like your choice of who you're keeping, but that's fine. It's all good for the algorithm.
Yeah,
and you're more more welcome to stay and put your argument up in the comments, because we're here. We'll take it. We won't beat you down.
So I have Nwangwu making the roster, and then on Wednesday he will end up on either the PUP list or injured reserve. But it'll be Alexander Madison, Ty Chandler, Dwayne McBride, and CJ Ham other than that. And I think it's pretty chalk. I think McBride makes it because Nwangwu isn't going to be, what do you call it? He's not going to be on the roster for week 1. He's still injured. So I think that makes a lot of sense as Dave pretends to smoke a crack pipe. Wide receiver. This one I have 5. I have Justin Jefferson, KJ Osborne, Jordan Addison, Jalen Reagor, Jalen Naylor. I think that Brandon Powell will be on this roster, but he's going to be one of those procedural vet moves. They're going to release him, and they're going to bring him back on Wednesday. So I really don't think that there's going to be any issues. It's going to be for guys like Kene Nwangwu and Chris Reed, who probably end up on those injured lists. And you have to keep them on the roster initially before you put them on and open up that roster spot. And I think Powell is one of those guys who's going to be taking that bullet initially. It's just something to be aware of.
Could be.
But Tristan Jackson has a real shot to make this roster too. And if you keep 6, that's probably what's going to happen.
Now, that's if everything goes normal and Reagor doesn't get traded or any of the other rumors that are flying today.
Yeah. All right. Tight end 3, TJ Hawkinson, Josh Oliver, Johnny Munt. Nick Muse could make it as a 4th. I think he's going to end up back on the practice squad. Personal opinion. But Johnny Munt was called by Kevin O'Connell the best tight end 3 in the league. They're not getting rid of him. They're not. And doesn't matter what we think of him. They like him enough. They're going to keep him. So if it's going to be a 4th, it's probably Nick Muse. Ben Sims has an outside shot. He's been very good, but I think he's more of a practice squad guy, even though he actually didn't. I don't know if he made my practice squad. I don't think he did. I agree
with you. I think Muse is going to the practice squad, but I think he played well enough that if we try that, he may be one that gets sniped.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he very well could, especially because he played well in the preseason. And tight ends are a tricky one to develop. So if you like a guy, you just could kind of go get him and you just kind of deal with it. They say that you draft a tight end for their second team because they take so long to develop. But I think Muse has potential. Let's go to offensive line. I have 9. You have your 5 stars. Christian Darrisaw, Ezra Cleveland, Garrett Bradbury, Ed Ingram, Brian O'Neill. Oliudo Blake Brandel are your tackles. Chris Reed and Austin Schlottman are your interior guys. Now, I think Reed's probably going to end up on that NFI list, which means he's out for 6 weeks. And you have to do that if he's going to return at all now. You can't do that later. So I don't know who would replace him. Maybe Josh Sokol gets that spot.
Well,
I don't know.
They did release him. They waived him today. And so hopefully they'll bring him back, because I thought Sokol was going to make it. But he's in a good position to do that. And Dave L talked about, so we're dealing with the same offensive line. As of right now, yes. But also watch within that first 24 hours, Dave, between cut down and the final 53 and then Wednesday, to see what happens when players rotate off to go on the IR, what the Vikings may do. You know they're watching other cuts. And there have been some cuts of some offensive linemen today that I went, So the starters are not going to change, though.
Yeah. No, I don't think the starters are gonna change at all. So it's the depth that I'm intrigued by. Oli Udoh's not getting cut because he's on a very unique veteran contract where if you were a late round pick after 4 years with the same team, you get to sign a deal where you make $2.54 million, but you only count as the vet minimum. And if you cut the guy, you have to pay all $2.54 million on the cap. The Vikings aren't going to do that. And they like Udoh a lot more than some other people do. So something to be cognizant of as well. Defensive line. This is another procedural group. I had 5. Dean Lowry, Harrison Phillips, Kyrus Tonga, Jaquelin Roy, and Asezi Odomewo. I don't know if Odomewo is going to make the team, but I'm going off the premise that, one, they were trying him some unique spots. They were standing him up as like a 7 technique off the edge and utilizing him in interesting ways. And they have not shown to be ones to give up on draft picks. I think that this is a guy who's going to stick around. We'll see if the Vikings agree, but same with Roy. And I think Jonathan Buller's going to come back on this roster, him or Sheldon Day, for that vet procedural move. And the other hopefully will end up on the practice squad because I think they're both good players. They just don't have upside like Odomewo and Roy do. And I think that for me, that's the tipping point, because if you're all on the same level now and the other two have some level of upside, you have to bet on the upside with all things equal. You just do. And I'm a big Bullard guy. I think Bullard's a very, very solid player who's a little underrated, but with his like status and all things considered, being a vested vet, you make that move. So that's kind of where I'm at there. Things get a little more interesting as you go forward. Edge rusher. This could easily be 4. It could be 6. Anthony asked if Max Duggan is worth looking at as a developmental project. I'm going to be honest with you, and I'm going to keep it short. Absolutely not. He doesn't have an NFL arm. He just doesn't.
That was succinct.
He probably should have won the Heisman Trophy last year, but college success does not end up equating to NFL success at all. So I'm completely out. Outside linebacker / edge rusher. I have 5. Danielle Hunter, Marcus Davenport, DJ Owanam, Patrick Jones, Luigi Villain. And I do believe that one of these guys could end up getting moved. I'm also not convinced Luigi Villain will make the team 100%. I have him here, but that's one that they could easily choose to just stash on the practice squad or move on from. He has had a very up and down camp and preseason, so that could end up being a thing. I'm very intrigued to see how things end up playing out with this group. And it's going to be interesting to see how things end up working out here, because Andre Carter II is still in potentially getting a roster spot as I adjust myself in my chair. I don't think he deserves one, but they have a lot invested in him, and they may not want to risk putting him on the practice squad. That's what they did with Lane last year. So it's a non-zero possibility.
He's going to make the practice squad, and he's going to make what they paid him.
Dave, what I'm saying is I don't know if they want to risk sneaking him onto the practice squad.
They should.
That's not the debate, though. I don't think.
You think because there's a sunk cost?
No, that's not it at all. I think they would fear losing him because of what kind of rare specimen he is that you could potentially mold into something.
He didn't show anything in the preseason.
He doesn't have strength and a wide arsenal of pass rush moves. A good defensive line coach, which we have in Chris Rumpf, can teach the pass rush moves. But you have to be able to develop that strength. And from the naked eye, he looks bigger than he did at Army. And
I'm sure he's been working at it all summer.
Yeah, it's growth. And he's a project regardless. But if a team thinks that they can use him as their project and get a talented rotational edge rusher out of the deal, they may not want to lose that. I don't think they're worried at this point. I thought so initially, but a $340,000 sunk cost is not a lot. But if they really believe in this guy, he's not going to go to the practice squad. He's going to stay on the main roster. And we can argue the merits all we want, but the idea would be just like it happened with Villain. It's a redshirt year. You just don't want to risk losing him. And so you have to keep a spot for him on the roster. They did that with Vidarian Lowe. They did it with Luigi Villain. They did that with Odomewo. Odomewo didn't play till like week 12. I think this could be the same situation. Is it a good one? That's where the argument is.
But I think to make a wager.
Ooh. Okay. What do you want to wager?
A favorite bottle of something up to $60.
Funds are a little tight. Let's drop it to under 50. But
okay.
I think
Drizzly delivers at both places, I'm sure.
Here's the bet. I will bet that the Vikings will be keeping Andre Carter he will be on the active roster at 12:01 a.m. Thursday morning.
Thursday. So you're saying that they're gonna keep him on the roster tomorrow, keep him Wednesday, and not release him till Thursday.
Yep.
12:01 a.m.
Even though I didn't have him on my projections, I'm starting to think that they're not going to let him go. And okay. I think that's the route they're going to take.
Okay. And I say he gets cut. He gets waived tomorrow.
There we go.
So we'll see. We'll know by tomorrow night.
Yeah. All right.
Cheers.
So let's go to inside linebackers. This one's pretty chalk. 4 guys: Brian Asamoah, Jordan Hicks, Ivan Pace Jr., Troy Dye. Troy Reader's got a chance to make interesting because I think he's had a decent enough camp, but I think that that's a veteran that they put on the practice squad. I don't think that he's going to end up making the roster unless they really dislike the end of what Troy Dye was, because that could really change things. So that last spot with Dye, I think, is the intrigue. Ivan Pace Jr. is going to make this team. That's not even a question at this point. So that's kind of where we're at. Cornerback, I have 6. I thought Tay Gowan had a shot. They injured him, and he's not going to be on this team. Maybe a practice squad. Because the waived injured, they basically pay you for X amount of whatchamacallits. They go to so if he's hurt, if he would be out for 3 weeks, they pay you for 3 weeks. That's basically the injury settlement. So we don't know what that is at this point, but we'll find out. But I have 6. Byron Murphy Jr., Andrew Booth Jr., Caleb Evans, Joanne Williams, Mekhi Blackman, and special teams maven Najee Thompson. I really think that he's going to make this squad based on his performance. And it's going to be hard not to. And Dr. Proto is correct. Odie is borking at Eclair downstairs. And I'm actually a little surprised that this mic can pick that up, but it can. So,
I'm hearing her, but that's okay.
Yeah. That's Odie is part of the show. Let's just be real here. I think the corner is something that they could add a veteran. I'm not convinced they love Joanne Williams. I do think that they like the rest of this room pretty well, and they are not going to give up on Andrew Booth Jr. They're just not. He's got too much potential talent, and so many different things have been going against him, like injury and all the other things. By the way, Dave, that's wrong. It's now 986. I know. So 2 more position groups, and then we're going to get out of here and get you all excited for tomorrow. Safety, I have 5. This could be 6. Theo Jackson could make this team as a 6th safety. Don't count that out. Harrison Smith, Cameron Bynum, Lewis Cine, Josh Metellus, Jay Ward. Theo Jackson's been very good. And sometimes you have to just keep good players. And maybe that's a guy that ends up knocking Najee Thompson off the roster because he's been good and he's versatile. I'm not saying he should. I'm saying he could, because he could easily be your 3rd or 4th safety and you feel pretty comfortable with it. And right now he's your safety 6. And that's a valuable piece.
And I agree with you. I think we're going heavy on TBs this year because, one, Jackson is very good, and we'd like to keep him because we know that Harrison Hitman Smith has a limited time to play because of his age. We know Lewis Cine isn't making the progress all of us would like to see. Jay Ward obviously has done well so far, but it would be nice to have these guys for the future. And then when it comes to special teams, Najee should be there because there's nobody. I don't care when he's in and he restricts punt returns to a whopping 2 yards total, and everybody else is letting punt returns go. There's no doubt the special teams coach is going to be jumping up and down on Kevin O'Connell's desk and Kwesi's desk that he has to make the team. So do we keep 10, 11, 12 DBs? That's possible. We might see that tomorrow.
There's a lot that's going to be happening, and I'm very interested to see how things end up working out with this group because Theo Jackson's been good. I want to see how it ends up factoring in, and we will find that out pretty quick. Last position group, specialists, nothing crazy here. Greg Joseph, kicker, Ryan Wright, punter, Andrew DePaula, all pro long snapper. That is your projection for the Vikings 53-man roster. And I'll run down who I think are going to be the practice squad guys real quick because I know we got to get out of here. Running back Aaron Dykes, I thought he showed enough in the last 2 preseason games to be. Aaron, who are our boys on the other show? Which show are you talking about? Drop it in the comments. I would like to know.
All right. I said yesterday they were showcasing Rager. Now, whether they intend to trade him or not, he was, because of all the play he got against the Cardinals, they were obviously showcasing him. So he is on that knife's edge of which way he goes. Do I think he's playing better this year? Do I think he could be a very solid wide receiver? Absolutely. Do I think they might want to trade him? Possibly. We'll see.
Yeah, it's very, very possible. All right. We got Dykes, wide receivers Tristan Jackson and Blake Prohl. I thought they've done enough. I think Lucky Jackson could be on this list as well. A lot of receiver talent in the room. Now, these guys aren't going to be wide receiver 2, but having good talent on your roster, a wide receiver, is a good thing. And I think these guys should step up well enough. Tight end, I think Nick Muse. Ben Sims is a possibility here too, but they have a lot invested in Muse already, and I think they're going to prioritize him. Center Josh Sokol and offensive guard Jack Snyder. Snyder's been a little inconsistent, but I think that they're going to want to keep 2 guys on the offensive line. And right now, there are no tackles worth keeping at all on this team outside of Udo, Brandel, and the 2 starters. So I gave the nod to Snyder, who I thought had some good moments. Defensive lineman, Sheldon Day and Ross Blacklock. I think there's still something there with Blacklock. He's got potential. He did not play well last year, but last year was also a really down year overall for the defense. So, and Sheldon Day was tremendous. Right now I have Andre Carter on the practice squad, but I have changed my mind since I published this piece. Troy Reeder, cornerback Tate Gowan, and safety Theo Jackson. Those are my prime practice squad candidates right now. And I think that that's a pretty solid practice squad, and they can add up to 16. So that leaves 4 spaces outside of the guys that I just named
that they can bring in from other squads.
Yep, absolutely. So this is going to be a very interesting group of football players, and the Vikings have now at this exact moment 20 hours and 3 minutes to make those decisions. They have to be in by 3 p.m. Central Time on the 29th. And then the practice squad can start being formed at 12:01 p.m. Central on Wednesday, August 30th. So that's it. This is what we have. This is how the Vikings are likely going to shape their roster. We are also, for those of you who don't know, at 986 subscribers on YouTube. If you're listening for the first time, welcome. If you haven't subscribed yet, you've been listening for a while, please do. That 1,000 mark is very important for us and to help us continue to grow. It helps us with the algorithm, and it helps us in so many ways. So please hit that subscribe and help us get above 1,000. And it's going to make a really big difference for us as we continue to grow this podcast platform and YouTube channel. We are going to continue to provide the best Vikings content out there, and we're going to have fun doing it. And I can't wait for Dave to buy me a bottle of bourbon. I'm thinking it'd be nice to have a backup bottle of Angel's Envy, but
hey, I can have it. If I can have it delivered, you got it. If you win the bet.
You can just send me money. We won't deal with that delivery garbage. I'm not going to pay somebody $7 to have it delivered when you and I are more than capable of driving to the store. We go to the liquor store. So
I do want to highlight one thing. Tonight, everybody saw that Justin Day was in the remarks. He's one of the moderators here. Justin Day, who is part of Vikings First and SKOL. He's on the podcast side. He has his own YouTube channel. He has a show tonight in 1 hour. And I highly encourage you to go over there and watch and give him hell and tell him to make it into a podcast.
Absolutely. Go check it out. And it's perfect because this show used to be at that time. And now he has the opportunity to do it without us as competition. And we like that. We like to be able to.
Hey, we're a team, just like the purple, baby. Just like the purple. And we're going to repeat division champion.
Yes. With that, make sure you hit that like and subscribe buttons, comment, do all the fun things. If you're listening on podcast, please do the same thing. We don't have many podcast reviews. Actually, we don't have any podcast reviews, but we have a few ratings. Please rate us with 5 stars. Give us a good podcast review so we can grow on that platform as well. In the meantime, that's Dave. I'm Tyler. I'm going to go pet my dogs. SKOL Vikings.
SKOL Vikings. And, of course, let's locate the file. I should have known better.
Oh, Dave.
I know. Here we go. Thanks for watching, everybody. like, subscribe, and ring the bell to get notifications. It helps us grow this community that we all love our Minnesota Vikings. And on behalf of Tyler Forness and myself, Dave Stefano, thank you so dearly for watching The Real Forno Show. SKOL, everyone!